It's a secret weapon in content creation because it gives you that little bit of a differentiator from what everyone else is doing. But I really feel like conversational SEO is really something you need to be focused on in the future for SEO. Like how you're putting your content out there is going to be very important to your growth. Your brain power is like unlimited. Every piece of this, it would take me a day. So when you talk about how much time you could save, I mean, right there, like this easily would take me 8 hours. We just did 30 seconds.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Austin Bram. I am the AI evangelist here at Integrail. Today, I have the privilege of having our Director of Growth Marketing here at Integrail, Joshua Sylvia, joining us to actually pretty much walk us through a content marketing AI worker that he has built. But now we kind of get down to what is Joshua's overarching campaign use case that he created. So Joshua, first off, like once again, thank you for joining us today. I'd love for you to kind of break down what is this theoretical Acme security company and use case you created.
Yeah, so I wanted to come up with a use case that would be very familiar to cybersecurity companies, B2B enterprise. So ransomware is a very popular topic these days. And so what I wanted to show was a pillar cluster. So if you're familiar with SEO, that's a foundational SEO strategy where you have a pillar. In this case, it's ransomware backup or ransomware recovery or ransomware defense. And then you have clusters that fall under those pillars that kind of create authority around that subject for Google. And it's also helpful for other campaign creations as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, when it comes down to, especially this, it makes me think of, what do marketers ultimately want? And this is like super simplified, and obviously there's much, much more, but like in my head, it's like, we want blogs a lot of times. We want, AKA, like this content that can go out on your website or an actual blog site. We want social posts, especially like, for me, for an example, like if you follow me on LinkedIn, anybody, like you'll see that this is constantly what I'm doing day in and day out. So like being able to have something that will create social posts for me as well, but then also customizable emails that will go out. Like maybe some of you even got some of these emails for coming to this live stream, is to be able to have, these types of things. And now this was my, assumption, Joshua, but is this kind of what we're, the same direction that we're trying to go?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, next thing we kind of have is, what is this persona? So Joshua, can you kind of break down for this theoretical, Acme security use case, who are we trying to kind of reach here?
Yeah, so we're trying to reach IT decision makers. We're trying to reach people who would be responsible for ransomware within the company. And so what you want to do is build the persona, right? And for any campaign. So say if this was for shoes, we would have, who are we trying to market these shoes to? So that's really where we start with here, is we have our persona, which is
Gotcha.
kind of what we have. Yeah.
Okay. And this is like, and coming from your expertise literally in this field, this is probably like a usual starting place for a lot of campaigns will be, who are we trying to reach? Who is our ideal customer? And like who is actually going to be going to? So for people out there, like companies more likely will have these thoughts and kind of this information inherently, right? They'll be talking about this beforehand.
Yeah, especially at the enterprise level, there's usually competitive teams where you can tap into competitive analysis. And, so this would be something you could definitely pull for most organizations.
Okay. And so this kind of just goes, for all of this, I will also say for everyone that's watching, no need to like drill down the whole and read these things. This is more or less just showing you what a company in this use case would have. So what the literal words here don't quite matter to any of you here. It's just the idea of this is what the information that you want to have maybe around your persona here. So like I said, no need to actually go through and read all of this. But basically now, Joshua, what is kind of the importance of when it comes down to especially setting up this campaign? with like this brand and messaging?
Yeah, so you touched on it in the intro. So when people think of AI content creation, a lot of times you'll see people just go to ChatGPT, they'll go to Gemini, and they'll type write a blog about ransomware backup. And you don't want to do that for multiple reasons. One, Google penalty. So Google does allow AI content, but you don't want to create the same blog that essentially 100 other websites are going to go to ChatGPT and basically have the same thing. You're going to have a duplicate content penalty, right? That's old school verbiage that most SEOs will be familiar with. So what we want to do is we have our persona we just discussed, so we have that part of it, and then now we're looking at the brand messaging. So we want to feed the AI, the LLMs, our brand messaging, our brand guide. We want to make sure that the content that's being created is aligned with our brand and our messaging, which is very, very important. And it's a secret weapon in content creation because it gives you that little bit of a differentiator from what everyone else is doing, right? Your brand, your messaging is going to be different. And so when you go to create a blog and you fed it this information, you're going to get a very different blog that it's not going to be the same as what everyone else is creating.
Okay. So like, this is also kind of the idea of having that fully customizable content because, especially like we'll just use it for, the example, a large enterprise is there's going to be a plethora of content, a lot of content for the most part, years and years and years worth that will allow them to, that we will like, which we'll show later, allow them to upload and be used as kind of, hey, use this as an example to create an actual brand tone and messaging tone. So like you said, it's not just going to be go to ChatGPT or Gemini and just write me a ransomware blog post. Like there's a lot more that goes into it, like with these templates that you built that we'll get into. So then we have kind of just quickly shown again, like, quick messaging. What is the problem? What is the solution? What's the differentiator? This is, like I said, all just theoretical content that you'll see where it comes into in a little bit. But then we have, this is kind of the important thing that I have actually a lot of questions that as soon as, Joshua and I started talking about this, I'm like, okay, what can people, because even if you've seen in the news, like Google is almost having to go through all of this right now themselves of like, how's SEO going to work with these LLMs? So Joshua, if you wouldn't mind kind of diving into this topic a little bit.
Yeah, so again, it goes back to our pillar cluster. So if you look to the right, you'll see the pillar, and then you'll see the supporting clusters. Previously, a lot of searches were 2 to 3 words, so people would just search like ransomware recovery or ransomware backup. And now there's lots of stats out there. People are searching in sentences, people are searching in paragraphs, and especially with LLMs, right? Like you're typing in, like, how do I respond from ransomware recovery when such and such happens and this, right? So like they're very, very long queries. And so you want to have a lot of content, quality content that answers these specific questions, because when you look at the results from, especially for AI, like as the market grows, there's going to be more searches in LLMs. It's going to be these conversational type of searches, and the systems are going to pull in the content that is optimized for those conversational searches. This again too is something that SEOs have always dealt with. Long tail. These are essentially long tail keywords, right? So they're variations of the core keyword. So it's a foundational concept. But I really feel like conversational SEO is really something you need to be focused on in the future for SEO with the LLMs. Like how you're putting your content out there is going to be very important for your growth.
Sure. Someone that is throughout the years, like seeing the shift towards, especially these LLMs, I feel like that's it's something that's happening. It's been happening for the last couple of years, but now it really seems like it's happening fast all of a sudden, where a lot of companies are having to figure out how to make that switch, right now for the most part. So super salient and time sensitive information right there. So thank you for that, Joshua. But now we kind of get into the idea of, after giving kind of all that context about, you're going to have your messaging, and you're going to have all these different documents, and you're going to have your tone. That kind of leads to the first step of building this AI worker, especially when we literally show it to you, is you have these inputs, and you have like the transcripts, you have the white papers, you have ebooks, more or less just the documentation that you have for your company, that you inevitably will have for your company, that you can use to actually more or less speak to your agent. So Joshua, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to kind of talk about inputs and the importance?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think most companies, especially large companies, have a lot of content. And so that's very, very good. Those companies are well positioned to use the kind of workflow that we're describing here, because they have so many white papers. They're constantly doing webinars. There's constant events. For a marketer, you can really pull in a lot of materials. Sure. Yeah, big advantage.
So then we kind of come down to the idea of like, what is it going to execute? Now I realize this looks like a jumbled mess right now, but there's a lot that kind of goes into it. So at the very top, you see kind of those three pillars. You see like ransomware backup, ransomware defense, ransomware recovery. And for each of those pillars, you're kind of given some actual pieces of content. So Joshua, if you wouldn't mind kind of talking about, since you built the the workflow, what was your thought behind all this?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the foundational of the pillar cluster. So we have ransomware backup. We're going to create a blog that's optimized for ransomware backup. And then for those conversational searches, we're going to also cover our bases with ransomware backup conversational searches. So that's why we have 5 supporting clusters here. And really what this does is it supports your authority around the topic. So if you just have one piece of content on your website about ransomware backup, when people are searching that, the search engines, the AIs, they're really not going to see you as an authority. You have a few hundred words on it. Whereas if you build out these pillar clusters, now all of a sudden you have this interlinked content that's very rich and very in depth, right? If each blog is 1,000 words, and you're talking at least 6,000 words, we're just using 5 blogs here as an example, but you could have more supporting clusters than that even. And you can have webinars, you could have demos for these different. So really creating these interlinked pieces of content to create the authority in Google and in the LLMs eventually.
Sure. So like, especially like, now of course with this, I literally like ran out of space to add on, but like you said, this could be, there could be easily a 4th pillar, a 5th pillar, so like it almost like scale, like we were saying, this is kind of infinitely scalable. You could just keep adding pillars, which then adds, more blogs, more social posts, and kind of can keep on going. So Joshua, when like through all of your years of, more or less having to do this manually, what would you say is like the amount of time that this could probably save somebody from firsthand experience?
80%. Like I could make up a number, 80%, definitely hours. Because even with the LLMs now, you still have to, like when I was doing this previously, I'd have to locate my documents, and then I'd have to upload my documents. And then for each blog, I would I would get it, right? And then the next one, and then the next one. And I'm sure people can relate when you're using these LLMs. Once you get past a certain point of back and forth, the LLMs, a technical term could be like they run out of tokens, but they start to hallucinate. They aren't aligned, and they are kind of all over the place. And so this process that we're outlining here kind of helps that not happen, which is a big key.
And like one thing I think that is probably a game changer for this process too, that we haven't mentioned yet, Joshua, is when it comes down to setting up this agent, when we actually show it, is you have a basically a template for each of these pieces, more or less. So you've quite literally taught this agent, this worker, to do exactly what you're looking for. Just for the sake of, so we can talk about it now, since we're already kind of on it, is can you kind of go into just the importance of templates and your process for implementing them into this AI worker?
Yeah, that's where I really think SMEs, so like subject matter experts, can really drive AI even further. So you have an SEO, or you have your social media manager, or whoever owns their domain kind of can create a template of like what they want. So for me as an SEO, I want my titles under 60 characters. I want the meta description under 140 characters. I want the keyword in the subtitles. And there's different formats that I like. And same thing with like a social media manager, or if you create ads, you may like it a certain way. And so when we built this, we also built out, so I'm talking a lot about SEO, but we also built out, this also will build social media content for each of the blogs, each of the pieces of the content, and also um, the emails. So we have 3 emails for each pillar that go out. So we started with an idea around SEO. We originally were doing this for SEO, and then we added on. And really, so right now we're covering SEO, social, and email, but you could add other things. You could add like a white paper off this. You could add, a demo script. Like there's so many things you could do. You could just continually build this out with all of the information that we're going to share, like how we upload it. And so it's all crafted that way. But
Yep.
yeah, you can continually build this out.
Now, after all that, if you would like more information, feel free to head over to our website at Integrail.ai. But enough of the presentation, Joshua. Let's go over and actually start seeing some of your demo here. All right. Perfect. So first things first, you see that this is kind of what our platform looks like. And you can see, Joshua, can you scroll out actually? That's that. Actually, I wonder how far you can even see, or is that as far out as it goes?
With this one, I think that's going to be.
Yeah. So there we go. That's perfectly fine. Just so people can see, Joshua has made, based off of everything we've just gone over in the presentation, a super sophisticated AI worker, but as he'll go into, it's actually not that complicated. So first things first, Joshua, thank you for scrolling out. You can scroll back in if you'd like. Could you go ahead and actually start breaking down this agent inputs part here?
Yeah, so a lot of what we covered in the PowerPoint, right? So when we're creating content, we want to have messaging. That's a very important thing to align with the messaging. And you can have a template. Again, there's no set template that you have to follow. It's just like however you want to structure your messaging and then feed it into an LLM, however you want to do that. The persona, like we shared, right? So you're going to load a persona. Then you have a transcript. So most companies, there's always webinars, there's always events where you can take those transcripts for content creation. Then there's white papers, there's use cases, and then there's pillar cluster. So that's essentially the keywords and what we're trying to build out. So that's the ransomware backup. How do I make sure my backups are safe, right? That's all. It's the pillar cluster mapped out. And then we have a template for our pillar. So we're going to have 3 pillars. So we want to have a unique template for those. And then we're going to have the 15 clusters. So we want to have a unique cluster for those. And then just to make this real for anyone, like you said, Austin, this is interchangeable, right? So we could easily be selling shoes or a bakery, like, there's whatever you wanted to put here, the messaging, who you're trying to target, some type, you don't need to have a transcript, but if you, most enterprises will have that kind of stuff. But really it's about inputs that are going to help your content creation. So you don't have to get stuck in, if you don't have a white paper, for example, you have a blog, that's fine. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be these, just the example that we're using here.
Gotcha. And so as you can see, this kind of next node, as we call them, over, you see a bunch of these things called readability nodes. So basically these readability nodes are our way of being able to take, because everything that Joshua has put in his inputs is a file. And so it's basically you input a file, and then for these LLMs to actually be able to read these files, which is kind of going on in the back end, like let's say when you're using ChatGPT or any of these chatbots, is there needs to be a special way for them to actually extract that data. And that's what these readability nodes are right here. So Joshua, going past the readability nodes, which is, like I said, just taking that data and actually putting it into a text that LLMs can read from. Let's start with kind of the first layer. What is this this first pillar that we see here?
So again, repeating it, but we go back to the pillar cluster model, right? So we have a pillar, in this case, ransomware recovery. And then each of these ones are going to support our main pillar here. So for this case, is it possible to recover from ransomware? What is the first action after a ransomware attack? So they're all tied. So it's basically pillar and then the cluster as you move over all the way into the output.
Gotcha. So could you actually open back up that first pillar node here? So this is something that I feel like this is something that like at least Joshua and I always love it. Like we're always talking about this. I see here that you chose GPT 3.5. For anyone that knows LLMs, that is extremely old. Now you can also see that. Can you actually open this up? Yeah, you can see that we have more or less even multiple versions of almost all the models, all the main models at least. Like you'll see in here like Cloud 3.7, you'll see GPT 4.1, Gemini 2.5 Pro or Flash, Llama 4, DeepSeek R3, like R1, like all of these models. And then can you go? You can go ahead and even get out of that. I want to show you right here. One part of this, when it comes, you can see right under GPT 3.5, you can see where it talks about the context window as well as the price to use the model. So as a company, obviously costs matter. Obviously, it's important for you to strategically choose which models you want to use. And with us, you have the ability, like for here, you can see that GPT 3.5 has 16,385 tokens. So, you can, that's basically probably like what, 8,000 words, maybe 9,000 words. And then $1 per million tokens that you put in. And then it's going to be $2 per million tokens you put out. After a while, especially when it has, we have 18 blogs here, 3 emails, 6 or social posts, however many social
18
posts.
social posts.
18. So yeah, 18 social posts. Those things start to add up. And so you can see how, like Joshua and I even talked about this earlier when we were creating this agent, is like, maybe there are certain things where like blogs, we know, at least traditionally speaking, that Claude is really good at writing. Like it's just a good copywriter. Maybe that's not so much, true anymore. Gemini and GPT are actually kind of coming up there, but like you can choose, hey, I know I want my model when it's writing something like a blog to be a different model. You have that choice, which I just want to kind of throw out there. But for this, yeah, you're already here. Can you kind of talk about this user prompt idea that we have right here, Joshua?
Yeah. So each of these have a user prompt. So each of these nodes that kind of go into guidance. So when we upload the documents, those come into the node as a system prompt. So you can see down here, you'll see these content connections. So basically the brains coming through the user prompt helps keep everything tight and kind of guided, right? So I use the simple ChatGPT, for example, to generate these user prompts because they're scalable, right? So you just need to tell it, with some prompt engineering, like what you're building, and then it's just a matter of kind of switching it out for each node. So each node in here has a custom content creation guidance. It's all very similar, but they are unique enough, again, just to keep the content. So you want to say, like, do not invent features or case studies not found in the provided documents, right? Like we all know that that's a big thing. Hallucinations are a big problem with content creation. Yep. Especially at scale. You don't want 18 blogs that are all citing these different things that you have nothing to do with you, or they're not real. So you want to have user prompts in each of these nodes that kind of help guide it.
Yep. And I feel like this is kind of an interesting point that I was talking to Joshua about, was like traditionally in a system prompt. So when you think of a user prompt or a system prompt, user prompt is what are you asking the LLM to do? System prompt is usually like, what is the underlying roles, guidelines, parameters that you want this LLM to always follow? That's when you see people be like, act like a content marketer, act like a professional assistant. do X, Y, or Z. It's kind of the underlying system prompt. But Joshua, you can see, has the templates as his system prompt because he wants the LLMs to understand the actual template. Because when you build a template, what is that? That's basically you telling, in that in that document, what are the numbers of words I want as part of this blog? How do I want my headers to be? All that. So he actually, when you think of inherently building a template, that is kind of a system prompt in and of itself. So just for everyone's kind of benefit, Joshua, can you talk about a few things about, maybe, obviously you don't have to show the templates, but like a few things that you think would be important to add into a template from a content marketing kind of perspective?
Yeah. So for SEO, right, you're going to want 1,000 to 1,500 words. You're going to want the target keyword at a 2% density, right? So you're going to make sure you're using the keyword within the copy. You're using the target keyword in the first paragraph. Your meta description contains a target keyword. It's under 140 characters. Your title, under 60 characters with the target keyword farthest left. You're going to want to use, in a few of the subheaders, the target keyword, right? This is all information that you would have in the template, which, like, to your point, would usually go in the system prompt, but the template already has all that. So the LLMs already know. And then it's just with the user prompt, you're really just giving it extra guidance.
Yeah.
So, but every SME would have their own things. Like if you create social media posts, you're going to have a style that you follow, right? You like having the first line, and then the next line, you like three sentences, and then you like having 4 hashtags, right? Like everyone has their preferences for different type of copy. So having those templates allows you to always get that output that you want without having to constantly go back and forth and, hey, give me it this way. Because if you go today and you say, write me a blog on this, you're going to get one format. You do it 5 hours later, you may get a completely different format, right? So there's no consistency. And without that consistency, it's not scalable.
That's a great call out there. Now, Joshua, for the sake of everyone here, could you actually show, because we talked about how infinitely scalable this is. Now, although like we said how, and you can look at this and be like, wow, this looks insane. It's actually not. It's actually kind of a logical progression of, and even sometimes like you can copy and paste a lot of this, just change a few things here or there. Could you show everyone how you could actually add a node to kind of keep this going?
Yeah, we also have the social down here, right? So we have the pillar cluster, and then essentially we created a social media post for each of these. So for each blog, there's a social media post that accompanies it. Same thing, we're pushing in data from the system prompt. We're giving it the user prompt. With the social media, the templates are a little smaller, so you can put it in the user prompt. So you can do different things for different formats because it's smaller chunks of data that you're passing through. I mean, it's a few hundred words versus like 1,500 words.
Yep.
But so yeah, if we go down, right, we have our social media, we have our email. So our email's down here as well. Essentially what we would have to do, we would come here, we would add a node, and from our LLM, like say I wanted to start building for Google Ads. So say like, okay, now we're going to have these landing pages or these blogs. Now I want to do like a Google Ads. And essentially, I'd come down here. I may have a template, but it would follow, keep title under a lot of what I just outlined, right? So I would kind of give it that with my user prompt.
Yep.
And then it's as simple as that. So like that would be done. It'd be a matter of connecting these readability nodes. So you just connect down here.
Yeah.
Like so.
I see.
And
yeah.
You'd have to connect out, and then you bring this over to the output, and essentially you'd be done. You'd have a new node. It's that easy.
So this is like, and this is one thing that I think is so kind of like when going back to when we talked about AI agents versus AI workers. AI workers is traditionally seen as a multi-agent system. So Joshua actually created multi-agents within technically one agent, and by agent here I mean like one canvas basically. On our system, you actually can create multiple different, like let's say you had the blog agent, then you had the email agent, then you had the Google Ads agent. You can also, this just like how you've seen him connect different nodes together, you can actually just even connect different agents together. So rather than seeing a huge worker that's like this big. You could see it like it's much more simplified and maybe a little bit cleaner. But for the sake of today, we wanted to show you what was underneath the hood. But you can just create basically as many different agents as you want to create these sophisticated workers. So why don't we go ahead, Joshua, and even show them, it running and kind of the output here.
Yeah, so you would run it, and it essentially it's creating 18 blog posts. So first off, it's pulling in your brain, the most important part, right? Like the documents that we uploaded. That's very important. So we're not just generating random blogs. We're feeding it the right information. And then we're creating the content at scale. So right now it's creating 18 blogs, it's creating 18 social posts, and 3 emails. Just by a click of a button.
You can even see here, like it tells you where it's working at the time. And as like for all the developers out there, this is like the debugging aspect of it. You can see like, oh, this node is the one that had an issue. And then you can debug that node. This one, like here, you can see that there's no issues. So it just kind of went through. But you can see exactly how it's working through and what workflow it's actually creating. So let's go ahead and maybe go over to the chat view of it. Yeah, there we go.
So this is what you would see. And we talked about this. We would change these outputs. So if you look over here, we could change these outputs to match the actual blog, which is what we would do. Sorry, my thing down here. But we would change this, right? It's very easy. You would just come here, and this would be ransomware backup pillar blog, right? And then when we ran that again, it would show up here. So you would know like what blog is what, and so on and so forth. So the first batch that we made are the blogs, right? So these are the blogs that we created. You can see here the format. And then, right, we did the blogs. And then we also, where's the social copy? So if we scroll down, here's the social copy. And again, this could be, ransomware backup pillar post. This would be like ransom backup cluster, so on and so forth. And then finally, we have an email for each of the pillars that we also created down here. So we could look using an email template, right? So again, you have your own, however you want your template. This is kind of how I fed the system.
So you can definitely see, like, first off, the difference between this and ChatGPT and this and Gemini inherently is like, yes, can you do each of these things individually in these platforms? Sure. Yes. Like if you prompt them, this would be like 40 times basically. And then assuming it's not going to start to hallucinate, it will start to hallucinate after you say it 40 different times for all that. It probably won't even let you do that. But then also it all happened in like 25 seconds, 30 seconds, all of it done. And then the next step, like I kind of mentioned earlier with our universal API connector, is like from here, you can then, connect it to HubSpot. You can connect it to an email, to your email, where like those emails will get sent out. You can connect it to any other CRM that you have. You can connect it to another API, whatever it is. That's kind of that next step of where you can actually go with building these AI workers. But even this by yourself, like you said, Joshua, if you were to build this campaign by hand or even old school way with ChatGPT, that would take you hours, probably days to go all of this, whereas this just took you 25 seconds.
Yeah, and people underestimate the brain power that's required to kind of get the content that you need from ChatGPT, because it's a lot. You never just go, if you're doing it correctly, really, you never just go and get it the way you want it right away, right? Unless you have a low barrier of like, okay, this is good. But most of the time there's a lot of back and forth. So it could take 15, 20 minutes to create a blog. And so, yeah, that's not a lot. Consider it to the old process, right? To do 40 blogs in a week, that's a lot, but you're limiting yourself, believe it or not. Even with Integrail, it's like there's no limits. Your brain power is like unlimited. Because even if I had to sit and do every piece of this, it would take me a day. So when you talk about how much time could save, I mean, right there, like this easily would take me 8 hours. It seems so simple. You go to ChatGPT and just like create a blog. But if you're a prompt engineer and you go back and forth to kind of mold the content the way you want it without the templates and the brain that we fed into it, it's going to be a long, long day for you.
Yeah.
Where we just did 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for that, Joshua. And then for everyone that is watching right now and watching after the fact, thank you all for stopping in today. We will start having these live streams in a more frequent way. So make sure to stay up to date on our LinkedIn, our website, as well as our YouTube channel. And we'll also be sending out emails for all those so that you'll know whenever these new live streams are happening, where we'll just continuously show you what can be done with this amazing technology and this amazing platform. So with all that said, Joshua, thank you very much for joining today. And everybody, we will see you next time.
Thank you.